Hi, this is Chris Castle, and you're listening to Your Morning Coffee, the podcast with Jay Gilbert and Mike Etchart. Weekly music news for the new music business.
From Chartmetric, do albums still matter, and which artists should be releasing them?
From Music Business Worldwide, Universal's direct-to-fan business, it's been growing at a whopping 33% rate, and three other things we learned from UMG's Capital Markets Day.
And from travel blog My Pack Wizard, a journey through the best record stores in North America. Well, that will be fun, Jay. We're looking forward to talking about that, and Jay and I are super happy you are all here. So without further ado, let us drop the needle on the vinyl right about now.
Stand by for transmission.
This is London calling.
Wake up! The revolution is at hand!
Your morning coffee is on the air. On the air. On the air. On the air. On the air.
Standing by.
Your morning coffee, the weekly music news for the new music business. It's the highly curated, agitated, advocated, moderated, and liberated digital music information that you need to know. We are your digital music authority. And now from our studios in Hollywood, California, here's your hosts, Jay Gilbert and Mike Etchart.
Well, Jay, it is, as always, so good to see you on what for us is a Saturday morning, as we've just been yapping for the last 49 minutes before we even thought to press the record button.
Yeah.
Always a pleasure.
Yeah, it sure is, and we've gone longer.
We've gone longer, that's right. And you've been a busy boy this week. You had a guest lecture, another guest lecture, which is always fun, isn't it, to talk to students?
I love working with college students when it comes to the music industry. This was the first time I worked with the University of Miami. I was a guest of Sirona Elton and Guillermo Page at the Frost School of Music at the University of Miami. Sirona, you probably know about Sirona. She's a force of nature. She's a professor and a director there, but she's also a lawyer and author, head of educational partnerships at the MLC. Sirona updated the popular music business textbook. It's called the Music Business Handbook and Career Guide. It's the 13th edition. And that one's originally written by Dave and Tim Baskerville, and it's used by a lot of college-level music business programs. So really had a great time with Sirona, Guillermo, and these students had some really great questions. It was really great.
Awesome. And a lot of great musicians came out of that college as well.
Yeah.
And Jay, the lead story in the newsletter this week by you for Hypebot, labels versus distribution, the lines are blurring. Good work.
Thank you. You know, we talked about this last week on the podcast. You know, we broke down that article in Billboard by Elias Light, and the headline was "A Fundamental Change: How Major Labels Learn to Stop Worrying and Love Distribution Deals."
Sure, right. And Elias pointed out that frontline major label deals typically come with budgets for recording, marketing, and more, along with access to teams of people who can theoretically help artists find new songwriting partners, polish their TikTok clips, and find money to support a tour. Since the label invests resources and services in the artist, it takes a significant chunk of money that they earn, as well as rights for the songs they make.
That's right. He goes on to say that distribution deals are often the polar opposite. You know, they typically come with far less money up front, few, if any, services, and significantly shorter terms. Since the company offering the deal doesn't commit much, it doesn't take much. And so I wrote in my piece that labels and distributors are frequently used interchangeably. But they used to be completely different animals with very little overlap. Today, the lines continue to blur with their respective roles and responsibilities.
Yeah, they sure do. We also released a wonderful bonus episode, the Your Morning Coffee podcast special bonus episode. That's a conversation with TikTok global head of music development, Ula Oberman. And that was, I wish I could have been there for that, but what a great conversation you guys had.
Yeah, it's finally live. We sort of teased it last week. It's in your feed. And as Mike said, I sat down with Ula to really talk about the evolution of TikTok, and we dug into the evolution of user-generated content, UGC, in the music industry, and, really how powerful it is as a significant revenue driver and a fan engagement tool.
Yeah, indeed. Also, a really interesting thing from Discmaker's blog. What are vinyl records made of? It was by Michael Gallant. And you may not know this, or you may know this, but the core ingredient in making vinyl records is vinyl, not surprisingly, also known as polyvinyl chloride, PVC, for the rest of us. It's got stabilizers, lubricants, carbon black pigment, because PVC is not black by nature. A lot of stuff in there.
Yeah, and this is such a great piece. We talked a little bit, on our special vinyl roundtable episode about how records are made. And, Tony Van Veen is a CEO at Disc Makers, and there's a video by Tony that shows how vinyl records are made in this piece. And it's really sort of a steampunk, voodoo witchcraft process. It's super interesting.
It really is. It really is. And you and I have been to a couple of manufacturing facilities, RTI being one of them in Camarillo here in Southern California. And it is dirty, hot work. I mean, it's really so much that goes into it, and it's fascinating when you see it in real time.
Yeah, I highly recommend that our listeners watch that video. It's really cool. Something really interesting happened this week. I saw this press release go across. It was about the National Independent Talent Organization, NITO. They filed a complaint with the FTC charging widespread violations of this BOTS Act. That's the acronym Better Online Ticket Sales. And they filed this complaint about ticket resellers. So I had the executive director, Nathaniel Marrow, on to kind of break this down for us. So let's listen in. Nathaniel, good to see you. Thanks for joining me today.
Thanks for having me.
I was reading that the National Independent Talent Organization, NITO, filed a complaint with the FTC charging widespread violations of the Federal Better Online Ticket Sales, BOTS Act, by ticket resellers. Tell us about NITO, the BOTS Act, and sort of the details behind this complaint.
Yeah, absolutely. And, thanks for kind of getting the word out on this as well. It's important that folks understand what's going on. NITO is the National Independent Talent Organization. I'm the managing director here. We've been around since 2020 as a kind of a pandemic savior measure to save our businesses. We're a trade organization of independent talent agencies and management companies. And so everyone got together in the pandemic to really kind of figure out how we could continue on. Obviously, those conversations turned into SFOG and the Save Our Stages bill and all those kind of things. So that was really the crux of it. And, as we've been moving forward, what are the other issues that we're taking on? Ticketing was obviously one of the biggest things that we could do. So the BOTS Act here, it was passed in 2016, I believe. It's essentially pretty simple. It just is, it's unlawful for any person to circumvent security measures to purchase tickets. That's either by using technology or technological advancements to do that, or, trying to get a horde of people and employ them to buy tickets all at the same time. It's basically anything like that that's really giving an advantage to someone over just the average everyday fan. So it's illegal to purchase tickets that way. It's also illegal to sell or offer to sell tickets that were obtained illegally that way. So obviously anyone that's been in the ticketing space long enough knows that it's happening all the time. People are using technology to bypass security measures. People are buying up hordes of tickets and they're reselling it on StubHub, on Vivid Seats, on SeatGeek, on TM, and they're selling it with intent to profit. We know that's happening. We know that's rampantly happening. Actually, I was talking to a member the other day who sent me a ticket count that was, going 10 a day, 15 a day, 6 a day. than 400 a day. Obviously, people bought up a lot of tickets with the intent to resell right then, and someone probably used some bots to do that. So we've been in contact with the FTC, just saying, the FTC is in charge of enforcement of the Bots Act. We've been in contact with them. How can we help more? So, we're sending them reports every now and then. We're sending them bot reports that we get from promoters from time to time. We're trying to just make sure that we can be helpful in this process in any way. But we sent someone to the National Association of Ticket Broker Conference, the World Ticket Conference in Nashville back in July. And, there's a lot of interesting things in the panels, interesting stuff, in the keynote addresses that were happening. But basically one of the biggest takeaways was that the large majority of the exhibitor floor was just filled with people that were selling technology that if you use this technology, you're violating the Bots Act. So our report that we just sent basically summarizes what we saw there and how people can, get different proxies, they can get different IP addresses, they can get different addresses, they can use virtual credit cards, they can do all these different things. And the exhibitors at this conference were more or less just telling everyone exactly how to do it. And so we figured that the FTC should be aware of that. And that's what the letter that we sent was, and that's the complaint that we just filed the other day.
Wow. Where can our listeners learn more about the work that you're doing at NITO, and how can they get involved?
Absolutely. If you are an independent agency or manager and you're not a member, we'd love for you to become a member. You can go to our website, NITOlive.org. And, there's a lot of member benefits outside of the advocacy work that we're doing. And, we're really trying to create a community here of folks that are in the same business and, have the same struggles and have the same issues that are happening in their day-to-day business. And we're trying to help out. So it's not just advocacy. We're really working on providing resources and community to these folks. So go to our website. You can also obviously follow us on social media. It's NITO Live on Instagram, Facebook, all that kind of stuff. And yeah, just kind of keep in touch. Again, if you are an independent agent or manager and you're not a member, we'd love for you to become a member. All you have to do is share a NASIX code, and then you apply to our website. We have different dues for different membership levels, depending on how much income you bring in every year. But yeah, stay in touch. We're trying to really build something here and make sure that this ecosystem is vital to everyone's life. So we want to make sure that it is, sustaining and has years ahead of it instead of dark times. We want to see bright times ahead of us.
Right. Keep up the great work, Nathaniel. Thank you.
I really appreciate it.
So, Jay, also in the news this week, Warner Music Group announces restructure of Atlantic Music Group, including layoffs. This is from Elias Light over at Billboard. Atlantic Music Group announced more staff layoffs on Thursday, while a memo from CEO Robert Kinsel did not say how many employees would be impacted. Sources told Billboard that the number would be between 150 and 175 as Elliot Grange prepares to take over as CEO of
Yeah, you never like to see this kind of news. Warner Records will now oversee Warner Music Nashville going forward, and the heads of global catalog, marketing, ADA and distribution, and WMX, that's the fan and merch division, they'll all report directly to Kinsel.
Yeah, very interesting. Another piece by Tim Bingham over at Music Business Worldwide. Irving Azoff's GMR just struck a $3.3 billion private equity deal. That's, of course, says Music Business Worldwide sources. Music Business Worldwide is confirmed via well-placed sources that Irving Azoff's U.S. headquartered PRO, Global Music Rights, that's GMR, struck a multi-billion-dollar deal yesterday. That was September 18th, actually, with a new private equity partner.
Yeah, the transaction, we're told, valued GMR at $3.3 billion US dollars. And it's understood that Azoff is maintaining a stake in the company, but TPG, his longtime co-owner in GMR, they've cashed out. GMR, led by CEO Randy Grimmett and headquartered in Los Angeles, was founded in 2013.
Right. In recent years, the company has represented the catalogs of artists/writers, including Harry Styles, Drake, Bruno Mars, Bruce Springsteen, John Lennon, Pharrell Williams, Nicki Minaj, Shawn Mendes, Metallica, Pearl Jam, Bad Bunny, John Bon Jovi, Lizzo, Journey, Prince, and The Killers. Wow, that's a pretty substantial group of artists.
Yeah, it sure is. That is a chunk of change. We saw a really cool story this week, and it was from a travel blog, and it's called, the travel blog is called My Pack Wizard, and the headline was A Journey Through the Best Record Stores in North America, so that piqued my interest right away. And it kicks off by saying that whether it's the warm crackle of the needle or the satisfaction of holding a classic album sleeve in your hands, there's something magical about vinyl that no digital format can touch.
Indeed. For seasoned collectors and newcomers alike, visiting the best record stores is crucial to building a collection full of unique and hard-to-find pressings. On this list, they say number one is Amoeba Music in Los Angeles,
Such
California.
a great store.
It's such a great store. Jerry's Records, number two, in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. In Chicago, Illinois, Dusty Grove is number three. Dusty Groove, I should say, not Dusty Grove. Also in L.A., Permanent Records at number four. Up in Vancouver, British Columbia in Canada is Red Cat Records at number 5, and they say number 6 is the famous Waterloo Records in Austin, Texas.
Love that store. Number 7, End of All Music in Oxford, Mississippi. Number 8, which I just visited a couple of weeks ago, Sonic Boom in Toronto. Sugar Records in Chicago, Electric Fetus in Minneapolis, one of my favorite stores. Rotate This in Toronto, and In Your Ears Records in Boston. And in addition to this list, I wanted to throw in a couple of our favorite record stores. I love Music Millennium in Portland, Oregon. Terry Courier and his team do such a great job up there. Jeff Moscow and I visited Record Collectors Paradise in Edmonton, Alberta a few years ago. What an amazing record store, one of the best. My sort of local record store of choice is Salzer's in Ventura. And whenever I'm, visiting Seattle, I have family in Seattle, I always go to Easy Street Records in West Seattle.
Yeah, and I've been going to Salzer's for decades, and the founder, Jim Salzer, who passed away recently, unfortunately, he was a local concert promoter here in the area. I also love Grady's Record Refuge up in Ventura.
Yeah.
And I'm in Santa Barbara, Paradise Records and Trading Post, and also Warblers up there in Santa Barbara. And you know what I like is not only do they have records, but also just the other stuff.
Oh, yeah.
This
books
one
and stickers.
Yeah, and vintage. The Paradise up in Santa Barbara also carries vintage stereo gear.
Oh, nice.
Grady's does also in Ventura. He's got some old cool gear, and it's just and you and I, we also like to do the same thing with bookstores, and it's just all of these cool. And these are all independent stores, and so they have their own personality. They have their own kind of vibe when you go in, and it's just a blast. Just a blast.
Sure is.
Yeah. So let's get to the stories, Jay. Actually, before we get to the stories, I say we should thank our sponsors.
That's a good idea. A special thank you to Music.ai. Music.ai is a trailblazing AI-powered music and audio platform offering an expansive suite of over 50 stackable AI audio solutions. You want to change the tempo or pitch of your song, adjust instruments or vocals, mute background noise in a song or a movie. Music.ai makes all of that super easy. Embraced by record labels, agencies, tech firms, and developers, Music.ai is synonymous with audio innovation. With over 45 million users, their tools process over 2 million minutes of audio every day. They can process yours today. Visit Music.ai to get started.
Indeed, and our podcast is also brought to you by friends over at Bandzoogle. Built by musicians for musicians, Bandzoogle is an all-in-one platform that makes it easy to build a stunning website and online store for your music in just minutes. All the features you need are already built in, including dozens of fully customizable templates, tools to sell your music and merch commission-free crowdfunding and fan subscription features, mailing list tools to grow your fan list, and integrations with Bandcamp, SoundCloud, YouTube, Bands in Town, and more so you can easily add content from your other online profiles, and live support from their musician-friendly team 7 days a week. Website plans start at just $8.29 a month, which includes hosting and your own free custom domain name. Our podcast listeners can go over to bandzoogle.com to try it free for 30 days and use the promo code MORNINGCOFFEE, all one word, to get 15% off the first year of any subscription. That's bandzoogle.com, promo code morning coffee.
Yeah, and a special thank you to Hypebot. Since 2004, Hypebot has chronicled the new music industry and the trends and technologies that are changing how music is discovered, consumed, marketed, and monetized. Edited daily by founder Bruce Houghton with help from Alana Bonilla, Hypebot and sister blog Music Think Tank are published by live music discovery and marketing platform Bands in Town.
Indeed, Bands in Town. Over 80 million live music fans trust Bands in Town to get personalized concert alerts, recommendations, and messages from their favorite artists. It is the #1 artist service platform, connecting over 590,000 artists with their superfans. Managers, labels, agencies, and artists access their own dashboard to manage and promote their tour dates across all platforms.
And finally, a special thank you to Billboard Pro. Want to know what everybody in the music business is talking about? Get in the know with Billboard Pro. Billboard is offering Your Morning Coffee readers a special 50% discount off the price of your subscription. Just click on the link in Your Morning Coffee.
Indeed. So 1,000 thank yous to our super groovy, amazing sponsors, Bandzoogle, Music.ai, Hypebot, and Bands in Town. Speaking of super groovy, I get to do this show every week with the legend, Jay Gilbert, music industry consultant, curator of the weekly Your Morning Coffee newsletter, and a former executive with Universal Music, Sony Music, and the Warner Music Groups.
And color me lucky because I get to do this show every single week with my good friend Mike Etchart, longtime host of Sound and Vision Radio, formerly of SST Records, Warner Music, Capital EMI, and Universal Music Group.
Well, and we were, as we mentioned kind of before we hit record, we are feeling the pain for those folks that have lost their jobs over at Warner's because, as you can see from our list of places we've worked, we've been through the same thing, and it's not fun at all. Well, let's jump into the stories, Jay. How about the first one? Do albums still matter, and which artists should be releasing them? That's by Harry Levin at Chartmetric blog. Editing and some fantastic charts in the post by Sarah Klobovs and Nikki Camberg. Sorry, Sarah and Nikki, if I slaughtered those names.
Yeah, they did a really nice presentation. So as streaming platforms increasingly favor shorter releases, artists like Dua Lipa and Jack White demonstrate that albums are still vital to an artist's career, while genres like electronic music, they often prioritize singles.
Right. So for the past 66 years, the Album of the Year Grammy has been announced at the end of every ceremony. It's the equivalent of the Best Picture at the Oscars or Best British Album at the Brit Awards. It's really the headlining award. So even though Forbes headlines are proclaiming the music album is dead, clearly, respected institutions still place albums in a very high regard.
Yeah, they sure do. Consumers also place albums in very high regard, considering the resurgence of vinyl. DJs and collectors are buying singles and 45s, but the casual fan is generally buying an artist's album on vinyl. Most of all, artists place albums in high regard because the format gives them the opportunity to share their creativity without any limits.
Right. So Steve Milburn, who's a producer, a manager, and a creative director who has worked with artists such as Andrea Bocelli, Mark Ronson, Michael Jackson, and AC/DC, among others, said most artists in the world that you speak to, big or small, want to release an album. He said it's the way of giving an audience a clear expression of who someone is as an artist.
While artists, they certainly want to share that clear expression, many modern aspects of the music industry reject the album format. Streaming services lend themselves to singles with the rise of editorial playlists, which simply don't have room for a full album. And social platforms like TikTok benefit incredibly with short songs.
So Pink Panthers is an example of an artist who blew up on TikTok by posting short snippets of music. One of her first songs to go viral, Break It Off, is 105 seconds long. Yet even after reaping all the rewards of leaning into limited formats, she still released her debut album, Heaven Knows, last year.
Yeah, albums are still necessary for artists to do, and it's still a very good, expressive venture for artists to dig into. I don't think that the general streaming ecosystem, music consumption ecosystem, really benefits albums at the moment, though, and that's from Harrison Bennett, who manages artists like Sippy Levity and Zed's Dead, and also runs Zed Dead's label, Deadbeats. He goes on to say that that's why I think it's even more important now as a vehicle for converting people into superfans and making people excited about every project as opposed to, oh, this is a hit and so I'm into it.
A hit, by the way, is deemed as such because of its measurable success. Streams, chart placement. But the Grammys don't award Album of the Year to the record with the most streams. This creates an interesting conundrum for artists. Releasing an album may not be the best thing to grow their career, but it is a chance for them to create without limits.
In truth, the way an artist releases music is as individual as their music, and fans adapt to the way artists release music, whether they're big or small, whether they're aiming for their next number one hit, putting their heart and soul into a full album, or releasing singles to keep the fans engaged.
Right, so let's consider Dua Lipa, who is currently 25th globally by Chartmetric rank and 18th in the world on Spotify with 67.7 million monthly listeners. Dua just released her third album, Radical Optimism, back in May, her first since 2020's Future Nostalgia.
Right. Dua Lipa, like many artists in the pop rock sphere, follows the traditional pattern of releasing an album every few years with a few singles ahead of the long playing. In this cycle, the three singles in advance were Houdini, Training Season, and Illusion.
However, thanks to streaming, she was actually able to release far more than just 3 singles and an album. Between the release of Houdini on November 9th of 2023 and Radical Optimism just this last May 3rd of 2024, there are 12 other clickable releases on Dua Lipa's Spotify, including 5 versions of both Houdini and Training Season.
Wow. Looking at the data surrounding Dua Lipa's full Radical Optimism campaign, when Houdini was released, Dua Lipa was at 66.8 million Spotify monthly listeners. The song spiked her up to 72.8 million. And then, other than a few dips along the way, the consistent stream of releases kept her growing until the highest point in the campaign, when the full album dropped, she had 78.5 million monthly listeners.
Oh, so interesting. So the first artist Harry breaks down in the article is Dua Lipa. So following the album's release, she shared 5 new versions of the song Illusion and a separate album of extended versions of the songs on the Radical Optimism album. But even on the back of those releases, her listenership has since fallen below 68 million. Clearly, the biggest moment in this campaign was the album itself. That's what Dua had spent the last 4 years working on, and now in support. She's touring again, selling out 2 nights at Wembley Stadium.
Yeah, another artist who demonstrates the persisting value of the album is Jack White. We've talked a lot about him lately. Similar to Dua Lipa, he releases an album every few years. He's released 6 between 2012 and 2024. But dissimilar to Dua Lipa, he doesn't release dozens of singles and other variants in between albums. In fact, for the last 3 albums, he either released 1 or 0 singles. His most recent, No Name, that came out this year, was a completely surprise release, no promotion whatsoever.
Yeah, very clever release, actually. So other than No Name, White released 3 albums since Chartmetric has been tracking Spotify data. His first was Boarding House Reach, then Fear of the Dawn, and then Entering Heaven Alive. Soon after Boarding House Reach came out in April of 2018, White had 2.4 monthly million listeners. By the following December, he was down to 1.2 million listeners, which is generally where he remained for the next 3 years when he didn't put out any new music.
All right, so let's do a little deep dive on Jack White. He released 1 single, Love is Selfish, in January of 2022, ahead of Fear of the Dawn in April, which brought him up to 2.4 million monthly listeners once again. Entering Heaven Alive was a companion album to Fear of the Dawn, which kept him in the 2.1 million range until September of 2022. Then he faced another sharp drop to a plateau of around 1 million monthly listeners until the release of No Name got him back up to 1.8 million.
So the spikes for new music and the consistency without it demonstrate that White has developed a solid audience by releasing music his way. People will flock to a new record even one that receives subpar reviews. Some will lose interest, but his core fan base will remain. After releasing albums so consistently for 25 years, that's what his fans expect. And more importantly, that's what sustains them. They've developed a connection to their favorite album the same way fans of Zed's Dead have developed a connection to their official long player, Northern Lights, back in 2016. So overall, there is no way to formulate any singular release that will guarantee an artist reaches the next level. Linking back to Dua Lipa, the biggest spike in her listenership was by far when she released the single Don't Start Now, which currently has over 2 billion streams. When that single came out, she jumped from 26.1 million listeners, which was a career low actually, to 41.2 million listeners in 6 weeks, and she has never fallen below there since. Fascinating, and on again the power of the album when you're releasing that for an artist, and how much that draws people in, and you can just see why it, from strategically at least and artistically, it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, it's counterintuitive. We know it's a track-based economy today. It's streaming, it's playlists, and I wouldn't have suspected that albums still played that key role, but it sounds like they do in the data.
Yes, they do. Absolutely.
Wow. Okay. Well, our final story is from Daniel Tenser over at Music Business Worldwide. The headline is Universal's direct-to-fan business has been growing at a whopping 33% rate. And 3 other things we learned at Universal Music Group's Capital Markets Day.
Right. So for some time now, UMG, Universal Music Group, has been prominently positioned in the effort to better monetize superfans, that segment of the music listening audience willing to pay more than others in exchange for a closer relationship with their favorite artists throughout merchandise, exclusive access to music, and other features.
Right. Daniel writes that at its 2024 Capital Markets Day in London last week, UMG's top brass laid out what could be called their superfan strategy, both in terms of what the company has been doing and what it plans to do in the years ahead.
So in UMG's view, superfans are key to maintaining the kind of revenue growth that the music industry has seen since it began to recover from the catastrophic era of music piracy.
Right. So far, revenue growth in the streaming age has been about scaling up. More subscribers at streaming services resulting in higher revenue for music companies. But going forward, UMG is aiming for about half of its revenue to come from improved ARPU, average revenue per user. In other words, a shift towards better monetization of existing music listeners as opposed to simply growing the subscriber bases.
Which is not to say UMG thinks music subscriptions have reached a saturation point. The company's top brass made it clear time and again that there is still plenty of potential growth in that area. There are some 600 million paying music subscribers in the world today, and UMG sees that growing to 1 billion by 2028 and is already looking forward to the 2 billion milestone in the years ahead.
Wow, I hope so. But this one-size-fits-all model of music subscriptions means that music industry is leaving money on the table, a reality illustrated by UMG's Executive Vice President, Chief Financial Officer, and President of Operations, Boyd Muir. He said, superfans, the most avid 20 to 30% of all music listeners, once drove more than 70% of recorded music spending. He said that at the Capital Markets Day.
Right, but today, with everyone paying the same fee for a streaming subscription, the revenue generated by the music audience has been flattened out, Muir explained. He said, as UMG CEO and Chairman Sir Lucian Grange noted, streaming equalizes the monetization across all fans, despite the fact that superfans listen to music a few hours every day, and yet casual fans only listen to a few hours every week.
Yeah, or in the words of UMG's Executive Vice President and Chief Digital Officer, Michael Nash, he said, the simplicity of this model, with all streams being equal, has precipitated problems with volume prioritized over value. Problems such as streaming fraud, the gaming of music streaming platforms.
Right, so the flattened music revenue model is why, in the era of music streaming, per capita monetization of music listeners is only 50% of what it once was, Muir noted. So what to do about it? For UMG, one key aspect of better monetization of superfans is an increasing focus on direct-to-consumer sales. In effect, an expansion of the wholesale model of selling music via streaming retailers to one in which UMG's artists sell directly to consumers through a variety of engagement and platforms.
Yeah, he said that we are developing more and more products and experiences for our most passionate and engaged fans. That was Nash, pointing to such examples as Billie Eilish's listening parties in theaters this past spring and the launch of Beat Galaxy, UMG's music hub, on gaming platform Roblox, giving gamers the opportunity to interact virtually with artists like Youngblood, Mae Stevens, and Kid Cudi.
So a number of other UMG artists, such as Olivia Rodrigo, Imagine Dragons, Post Malone, and Nicki Minaj, have developed presences, on Roblox. Our efforts have included a fully immersive 360-degree virtual Rolling Stone store, which replicates the band's iconic flagship store on Carnegie Street in London earlier this month, Michael Nash noted.
Yeah, he also didn't mention that some of the less direct efforts by UMG have been engaged in, like the investment in K-pop giant Hybe's Weverse, a superfan platform that's been busily expanding out of the primarily South Korean fan base and into North America with UMG's help.
Yet it all points to a significant expansion of UMG's business model from one that focuses on selling records to one that focuses on selling the artist-fan relationship. Michael Nash went on to say more and more of this business is and will continue to be direct-to-consumer. He noted that UMG's direct-to-consumer revenues have seen a compound annual growth rate, that's CAGR, of 33%.
Right. He went on to say that the superfan DTC, right, that's that direct-to-consumer opportunity, is not just a complementary high-growth revenue area. It's also an important competitive advantage that's increasing our appeal to artists and giving us the capability to do more with them than our competitors.
Right, so UMG had much more to say on its efforts towards better monetizing superfans, and here are some of the things that was learned from its Capital Markets Day presentation. Number one, UMG is partnering with Spotify on the streaming platform's new super premium subscription tier. It was rumored for more than a year, and a few months ago we finally got confirmation. Spotify is in fact building a new super premium tier.
Right, that new tier, likely to cost around $5 more per month than the regular premium subscription, is quote-unquote huge music lovers who are primarily looking for even more flexibility in how they use Spotify and the music capabilities that exist on Spotify. And that's what Daniel Ek said earlier this summer.
So we don't know exactly what this tier will include. Well, if high-fidelity audio seems like a likely bet, if nothing else. But we've now gotten word from UMG's Michael Nash that the company is working with Spotify in developing this new tier. Nash told Capital Markets Day audience, "We're working closely on the development of a compelling set of new features that will elevate the listener experience and further deepen artist-fan engagement."
Just like Daniel Ek, Michael Nash didn't offer many details on what those features will be, but he did point to another streaming service's effort to better monetize superfans, and that would be the Chinese platform Tencent. And Tencent has a super VIP tier, which costs 5 times as much as a regular paid subscription. That tier comes with, in the words of Tencent CEO Ross Lang, comprehensive online and offline privileges, such as priority access to digital albums and ticket booking for live music events, including the Tencent Music Entertainment Awards.
Right. So Tencent's Super VIP tier is another exciting example of how product innovation can significantly enhance customer value. That's Michael Nash speaking. He said adoption has already been strong, and we believe it has broken into double-digit percentage of the subscriber base. We expect super premium tiers to be deployed by most streaming platforms, enhancing the subscriber experience, bringing fans closer to the artists they love, and significantly increasing subscription revenue.
Right. And number 2 of the 3 things they learned is that UMG wants to see greater segmentation of the music streaming customer base. A super premium tier is nice and all, but could there be room for even more segmentation of the music streaming subscriber base? Michael Nash certainly thinks so, arguing that the video streaming markets hold many lessons for music streaming services and how to better monetize this customer base.
Right. So he said, that's Michael Nash, Netflix uses 3 paid tiers to segment the market and capture more of consumers' willingness to pay while effectively addressing account sharing to significantly grow their subscriber base. In the U.S., Netflix offers a $6.99 a month ad-supported standard with ads plan, which offers 1080p high-definition streams and can be used on 2 devices at the same time. A $15.49 a month standard plan with the same features as the lower tier except no ads, and a $22.99 a month premium tier with no ads, a 2160p ultra high def streams, and the ability to stream on 6 devices at the same time.
Yeah, I see where they're going here. Not only does that suggest that music streaming could be further segmented, but video streaming success in building a customer base shows music streaming has plenty of potential subscriber growth ahead. Video streaming has already surpassed 1 billion individual paid subscribers. That's not subscription plans by SVOD, that's subscription video on demand subscribers. That's 1 billion individual paid subscribers, he said. It's projected to continue to grow through the end of this decade at a pace that will maintain its lead well over music subscription.
So Nash went on to say the average U.S. household spends over 4 times more on subscription video on demand than they spend on music subscription, which suggests we have considerable headroom for better monetizing the music consumer moving forward.
Right. And the third thing that they learned, don't overreact to fluctuations in revenue growth. As the drivers of UMG's revenue growth shift from streaming subscriber base, that growth to ARPU growth, that's average revenue per user, and expand from music streaming royalties to direct-to-consumer interactions, the company anticipates fluctuations in revenue growth.
Right. So back to Boyd Muir, he told the Capital Markets Day audience, we expect periods of acceleration and deceleration along the way. And as a result, we encourage you not to overreact to modest period-to-period fluctuations. That seems to have been a reaction, at least in part, to the steep dive in UMG's stock price in the wake of its most recent quarterly earnings report, in which the company reported 6% year-over-year growth in revenue from subscriptions, well below analysts' expectations of a double-digit increase. Again, that's by Daniel Tenser at Music Business Worldwide.
Great job.
And Jay, please do not worry about these little fluctuations in UMG, okay? I just want you to know.
I'll try not to worry about that.
They're just little fluctuations.
Little fluctuations.
Yes, indeed. So as we wrap up the show, Jay, Gilbert, and I want to say thanks for listening. And if you like the show, just tell one friend. We would certainly appreciate that as well. Big thanks to Bandzoogle, Music.ai, Hypebot, and Bands in Town, our wonderful sponsors. We appreciate you all greatly. So on behalf of Jay Gilbert, I'm Mike Etchart, and we both say thanks for listening, and we will, in fact, be back next week on the Your Morning Coffee Podcast.
You've been listening to Your Morning Coffee, the weekly music news program for the new music business. Join Jay Gilbert and Mike Etchart next time for the digital music news you need to know.